Hey everyone, welcome back to another day of Room Schoolhouse. As I'm sure you guys have noticed, there's a lot of news continually coming out, but one story kind of caught our eye because it deals with curriculum, specifically history curriculum. And I don't know if you guys kind of know what we're into, but we like history, and we like history curriculum, and what was fascinating...
We like some history curriculum.
Yes, exactly. We like good history, real history, not this fake stuff. Speaking of fake history, that's actually what this news story was about. President Trump came out in a press interview talking about how he is considering withholding funding from schools that use the infamous 1619 Project as its curriculum. It's the New York Times, that great historical institution.
That by itself is that's a great credential all by itself.
Yeah, I think they used to be a newspaper back in the day, right?
That's right.
Is that what they, formerly known as a newspaper? Anyways, so the 1619 last year, it was a project that the New York Times did that purports...
And they gave themselves a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah, they gave themselves a Pulitzer Prize. It purports to be history. It purports to be the true story of American history. And they basically make a lot of kind of outrageous claims that are very anti-American, anti-constitutional, and it really has led to a lot of kind of rotten fruit that we're seeing now in this kind of summer of violence.
Their whole position, their starting place, and this is kind of how they introduced to the nation the 1619 Project, and this is all their articles, and this is kind of their overview and overtone. And so what they do is, this is the general assumption, that America was founded to protect and promote slavery. That's why we were founded. Now, it's going to come as a shock to the Pilgrims and the Puritans and so many other religious colonists.
It's going to come as a shock to all those people who were the earliest abolitionists in the history of basically the world.
That's right.
But, what do they know?
But what do they know?
What do the original colonists
1619, they've got it.
It's the New York Times. Don't they read the papers?
They make the paper.
Yeah.
So they start with the premise that America is founded to protect and promote and preserve slavery. And grab this. They say that America's constitutional system is the source of all of our ills, and the chief ill is racism.
Yeah, because, racism is constitutionally protected.
Exactly. Like the 13th, 14th, 15th, all these things that abolished it. Yeah. So follow their logic. We're founded to promote slavery. We have a constitutional system that embodies all of our ills, and the chief ill is racism. So if you want to get rid of racism, you need to get rid of the constitutional system because the entire constitutional system promotes racism. So that's their objective, is to get rid of the constitutional system?
I mean, it's a very basic syllogism, right? If A is B and B is C, then C is A, and we need to get rid of America, right? And we see this fruit now happening in all these riots. In fact, the kind of main founder of and the person behind the 1619 Project, she recently came out and said she would be honored if all these BLM Antifa riots, where they're tearing down statues, if they were named after her project, if they were named the 1619 riots. She said that would be a greatest honor.
The 1619 Project, with all the violence, all the destruction of private property, all the loss of life, all the things that happen, I'd be honored if you would name that after the 1619 Project.
I mean, you really have people marching through the street shouting "Death to America" in California. Now, I understand Californians might not realize that they're actually in America, but it's the fruit that, and the Bible talks about, you can tell a tree by its fruit, and if the fruit is just rotten, the tree, we can reasonably assume, is quite rotten itself. And as you open it up, I mean, and we'll go into this more in depth later this week, I mean, it is just all the premises are completely ahistorical and false. And it really does show that journalists did this and not historians.
Journalists did it for sure, because even some historians are really bad today, a lot of historians at universities. What's interesting about this is supposedly all these riots are about racism and Confederacy and Confederate statues. Okay, if it's about racism, why did you go after the World War I memorials in Birmingham and in Kansas City and in Pittsburgh? And why did you go after the World War II memorials in D.C. and in Indiana and in Merced, California?
Or even carrying that further, why did you tear down a statue of Frederick Douglass?
That's right.
Why did you deface a memorial of the Massachusetts 54th, one of the leading African-American regiments in the Civil War, right, who were fighting against the Confederacy? If this is really what your aim is to eradicate racism, from America, which, right, we're totally against racism, but we have to actually be attacking what is evil and not Frederick Douglass, right?
So really what you see is they're attacking more of America than they are of racism.
And they're
saying
using
it's
the
about
cover.
racism. That's right. Racism, because everybody's going to get behind, yeah, we don't want racism. So we tear down World War I, World War II, we tear down Union Civil War stuff, we tear down abolitionist stuff, we tear down anti-slavery stuff, we tear down anti-racism stuff, we tear down all these Christian monuments that are coming down because Christianity they think is a really bad deal. That's anti-America is what it is. It's not after being anti-race. So
and it's not founded on truth at all. In Isaiah, it talks about you have to have truth if you're going to have equity, right? You have to have truth if you're going to have real justice. So the fact that the premises that they're based off of, the history isn't real, it's not truthful, then the fruit that's coming is not going to be justice. It's not going to be getting rid of whatever vestige of racism is left in somebody's basement, right? It's not going to have the results that they claim to be fighting for, and we see that all throughout the streets of America now.
Well, you see, on some of the statues are being torn down, they're painting 1619 on the statue. So when you have a movement that is destructive, it's violent, it is destroying private property, it is killing lives, it is doing so much damage, President Trump says, hey, let's not fund this movement in public schools. Now,
but wait a second, freedom of speech.
This is where it gets real interesting, because if you go back to, let's say, Eisenhower, and President Eisenhower, before he was president, 5-star general, and he is the guy who took on tyranny in a very real way.
He's the guy who defeated Hitler and the Nazis.
That's right.
And in case you don't know, Hitler, really a racist guy. So if we're talking about anti-racists, Eisenhower is kind of a great, real example of that.
Not of an anti-racist.
Yeah, he's an anti-racist.
I mean, he fights racism because he's the guy who went in and really kind of opened up what was happening in the Holocaust with all the camps and what Hitler was doing. He
documented it, showed the world the atrocities of Hitler, and he defeated Hitler's armies across the world. So Eisenhower is this great guy, but he has some really interesting thoughts that apply. Actually, in one of our previous books, This Precarious Moment, it's a really good book, goes through a lot of really hot button topics, but we document one of these really great ideas that Eisenhower had about how do we protect America from internal threats as well as external threats.
This is what he said. He said, the Bill of Rights contains no grant of privilege for a group of people to destroy the Bill of Rights. A group dedicated to the ultimate destruction of all civil liberties cannot be allowed to claim civil liberties as its privileged sanctuary from which to carry on subversion of the government. So we have a Bill of Rights that guarantees our God-given and inalienable rights for every single individual, regardless of any outside demographic. Because we're humans, we have certain rights. Well, my right of freedom of religion does not give me the right to destroy everyone else's freedom of religion. That's one of the things with Sharia law. Freedom of religion allows Sharia law. No, Sharia law says there can be no freedom of religion, so you can't use that to commit suicide. You can't use the Bill of Rights to kill a nation. You can't use the Bill of Rights to kill rights. You can't use the freedom of speech to destroy everyone else's speech. You can't use freedom of speech to say, I'm not going to let you talk, which is what universities are doing now in so many areas.
Yeah,
so
basically
that point is just strong.
You can't use the Constitution to attack the Constitution, to destroy the Constitution, which is exactly what the 1619 Project is doing. So President Trump is definitely right on the mark here, talking about let's take this kind of a divisive, terrible, not really truthful curriculum, let's take that out of the schools and instead substitute it with something that is actually based on facts and something that educates people about what the Constitution actually means and how it's not racist at all, and in fact secured more rights and liberties for more people than anywhere else in the history of the world, right? America has led the world for centuries when it comes to fighting slavery, and it continues to do so today. And we've talked about this a lot in other videos, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it a lot because people need to know this truth, especially when there's so much untruth being spread.
Let me show you how untruth gets spread. This is part of the 1619 Project. This is the 1793 law signed by George Washington. And to show how racist he was, they've redacted all the other parts that weren't racist. It's like
you literally could not create a better metaphor for literally deleting history. They've taken the law and they've deleted 97% of it and said, ha, boom, racism.
If I were to take any bill and I could just pick and choose my words and arrange them in order. I can make it say anything I want to.
Exactly.
I can have a hidden code.
I could take the 1619 project, delete 97% of the words, and I might come up with a half a sentence that isn't wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So it is not a good deal. And by the way, does President Trump have the authority to defund curriculum like that? No. What he's talking about, and what he's done in previous times to this, is I'm going to stop federal funding to schools that would use federal funding. He does not have the authority to stop school funding in the states. He knows that. He's been really good in his executive orders on staying in what is constitutional. He understands federalism, the difference between the federal government and the state governments. He's talking about we're not going to let any federal funds go to any schools that are using this curriculum. The federal funds can't be used to purchase this curriculum. There are going to be federal funds for other things. And for most public school districts, federal funding is 3 to 6% of their income, but most public schools are operating on such a tight margin that if you take 3 to 6% out, they're going to kind of go belly up. So this is a really big threat, if you will, but it's a threat for the right reason. Like Eisenhower said, you don't want to fund things that are going to destroy what you're trying to preserve. We are the hope of the world in so many areas. That's why people come here. And so we're going to use freedom of speech to destroy speech. And no, you can't do that. And so that's why this is a good move by the president. He hasn't made it official yet, but generally he announces it before he makes it official, so we expect it to come.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens, but he's on the right track. We need to stop giving credence to these things that are completely unfactual. But if you want to know more about the real American story, our actual history with race and slavery and how America, despite all of its flaws, because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God,
right.
But America has been a defender of the weak, a defender of liberty throughout the centuries, even in those times where we were struggling with internal problems as well. But if you want to know more about the real American story, we have a new book coming out called The American Story. You can go to WallBuilders.com, check it out, order it. It's going to be shipping out to you pretty soon, but it contains a lot of very valuable and useful information.
This is the antidote to the 1690
exactly.
Project.
This is the lie. This is the truth. And what's fascinating too about it, just to show the differences, if you go to the end of the 1619 Project, you get a nice little picture. But what's fascinating, you have a quote on the back of it, but what's fascinating is there are no footnotes. If you go to the back of this book, you'll find over 1,000 footnotes going back to reputable secondary sources, but a lot of primary, authentic sources from eyewitnesses who are telling the history as they experienced it because they were actually there. So, two different choices. I highly recommend you go into our sources.
Go for truth.
Go for truth.
And be able to, and by the way, just because we say it doesn't mean it's truth.
Yeah.
That's why the footnotes are there. We
go check it
encourage
out.
you to go check it out. We encourage you to challenge it. That's what that's what actually Paul said. He loved about the Bereans in his journey. He said, I'm the most credentialed apostle there is. I love these guys. They don't believe me till they check it out.
So if you want to learn more about the real American story, check out our book. It's coming out soon. And join us next time on the Room Schoolhouse.